Welcome back. Welcome back. It is week 9. We're going on week 10, actually. I am back. There's no crying in fantasy. I'm with my co-host, my temporary co-host, let's say, uh, Mr. Phil. How you doing this week?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I don't know if you just saw it. I know we just spoke briefly before we started, but there's a case on possible Dalvin Cook. I don't know if you just saw that. Just
I
popped
did
up.
I did not see that. Break the news for me. What's the news?
Domestic abuse case.
Oh
It
man.
looks like a potential domestic abuse case. It literally popped up as I was getting ready to get on with you. So I don't know any details. Just a domestic abuse potential case.
Okay, so we need to pay attention to that. Alexander Madison should be up.
Mm.
And anybody else that's in that
Yep.
backfield should be picked up. So breaking news right here:
Yep.
Dalvin
Yep.
Cook is the victim of domestic abuse and extortion. That is per Adam Schefter's Twitter, and just manage this. And if you have Alexander Madison, pick him up. If you have Dalvin Cook, make sure you pick up Alexander Madison's backup. So cover yourself in some way. Breaking news. So
Yeah.
week 10, man. I mean, week 9. Week 9 was the week that wasn't like it was just so much confusion. There were so many games where the underdogs won the game. A lot of fantasy stars didn't perform the way we thought that they were going to perform this week. So what do you make out of this? Like, is this just an anomaly, or like do you really pay attention to this?
I think it's just an anomaly. I think it was just a week. I remember watching the games and like normally I have alerts coming through on my phone for like touchdowns, and I'm like, what's going on? None of my guys are scoring. So I think it's just an anomaly. I think some guys had some decent weeks, but a lot of unexpected guys did well. Actually, we did have one injury that we kind of forgot to speak about. It was also the um, Chase Edmonds. So I think that's the only thing that really came out of this week that he got hurt, but nothing. It was a weird week, very weird week. Looking at things, it's like I thought we would have had a lot more because there was no sexy matchups really, truly. Like even the primetime games weren't that
Yeah.
great, you know. No real big games that you were like excited to watch. Like yesterday, I watched a game just because it's football, but I wasn't excited about that
Let me
game,
let
you
me
know.
tell you how crazy this week was. The Thursday game was the most interesting game, just about.
Yeah, it was
And that
actually. It definitely
that never
was.
happens. I mean, you had we'll get
Yep.
into this in a second, but you had massive fantasy implications in that Thursday game with
Yep.
people who started Mike White, and then Josh Johnson comes in. Josh Johnson becomes a top 5 quarterback for the week. Jonathan Taylor,
Yep.
Naheem Hines finally gets some run. Michael Pittman starting to break out. Elijah Moore starting to break out.
Elijah Moore was the number one receiver.
Yeah. Yep.
He was the number one receiver last week.
Yeah. So that's how much of an anomaly that this was, that the Thursday game was probably the best game of the week. Um, and the
Definitely.
news that we got today also is Nick Chubb is going to be out for this week, we think, because of COVID-19 protocols. So he may not be in, and the Browns don't have any other backup running backs because Demetric Felton is also in protocol, and that leaves Dearness Johnson with the full workload for the Cleveland Browns. So if Dearness Johnson is still out there on your wire, make him your number one priority again. And if you have Dearness Johnson, he just automatically goes into your lineup for this week. So that's the news out of Cleveland for this week. So I mean, that's not the only news out of Cleveland. So
Definitely not the
we'll,
only
we'll, we'll
news.
talk about
But
we'll talk about that in
just
a
wanted to
second.
piggyback.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll
but let me piggyback off your Dearness Johnson. What you said about
mhm.
Dearness Johnson. If I needed a running back, I definitely picking him up because I know I put claims in for him in a couple of places. But honestly, I don't know how good he's going to be. He was great that one game he played, but I feel like you're playing the Patriots, you know, and the Patriots. What does Belichick do? He tries to stop that best player on your team. Who's the best player right now on that team? It's not Landry. It's definitely not Baker. So it's Dearness Johnson. So I think the focus is going to be on him, and you know that's what Belichick likes to do. So if you're in a pinch, I definitely would pick him up, but I don't know how much
Yeah, I mean,
expectation you should have for him, especially
yeah,
not this week.
that's a great point. That I still think he slots into a flex spot for you if you have him, or even a
Of
RB2
course, yeah.
because of the workload. But you are right; he's going up against the Patriots. Patriots are a tough run defense, and Bill Belichick does like to take away your best option. And right now, Dearness Johnson is probably the best option for the Browns, other than the tight ends. And you possibly could see 2 tight end sets where they're using both the tight ends. This could be a good Jarvis Landry week, which we've been waiting for a long time as well. So just some massive fantasy implications with Nick Chubb being out this week and knowing how the Browns like to run the football. Yep.
Absolutely.
So let's.
But I would definitely say pick him up though, because I know I'm picking him up, but
Yeah,
I'm just doing it on a whim.
definitely pick him up. But let's get into the topics for this week. So we saw something come out on Thursday, and that was Marlon Mac didn't get traded, but Marlon Mac was also not on the roster. And Marlon Mack really hasn't been a factor, but we did see him starting to get a little bit more run in the Indy defense. Derrick Henry is out. We don't know how long he's going to be out for, but it looks like he's going to be out for the remainder of the regular season at least. Jonathan Taylor, is he now the RB1 of fantasy going forward?
I can make an argument for him, but honestly, I don't think he is. I think he's number 3, honestly. I think he still has Nyuk Hines there who's going to steal some touches. And like you said, Marlon Mac's still there. I don't think you're going to keep him all year and make him active scratch. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. He should get some burn. And I think you got to keep Jonathan Taylor healthy, especially if you have playoff aspirations. You want to be able to have that guy in your lineup that's going to be able to carry that workload. He's going to I think he's going to be number 3 running behind CMC and Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook is okay now, but if not, he's definitely going to be number 2. But I think Dalvin Cook, if everything works out, he would be the number 1 guy, and CMC would be number 2, and then we'd go to Jonathan Taylor. But I think Jonathan Taylor, he's going to be sharing a little of that workload with Nyuk Hines just because I just don't think he's built to carry that workload like, say, a Derrick Henry or Dalvin Cook or even a CMC. But I think he's a really strong player, and I would definitely not hesitate to have him as I can make the argument for him as number 1. I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
I think he's the number 1 running back going forward. And I'll break it down for you with a couple of numbers. So Jonathan Taylor has 15 or more carries in 7 out of 9 games this year. He has yet to hit 20 carries. He has 100 rushing yards in 4 out of 5 games over the last 5 weeks. So I think he is the number one running back going forward. We've seen his usage increase. We've seen him been more involved. We see this offense clicking a lot more than it was before. So I think his trend is upward as to what it was in the beginning of the season, where we didn't know what the usage was going to be. We know the usage is there. I think that they're going to be in more games. I think they're going to be winning more games, honestly. And you'll see them use him a lot more, and Nyuk Hines as well. I think the Colts know what they have in Carson Wentz. And I think they realize that they need to lean on the running game more than they were in the beginning of the season. And I think you're going to see Jonathan Taylor kind of explode into that number 1 running back spot. I can see the case for Kamara. I can see the case for CMC. I can see the case for even Dalvin Cook. But when I look at what has happened in the offenses for the Saints and the Panthers, Panthers news that just came out, Darnold has a fracture. The offense hasn't looked good anyway. And then you lose Jameis Winston. You now have Trevor Siemian in the Saints offense. I think if I'm picking by the offense, Jonathan Taylor is going to be the number 1 running back going forward, just because I think they've embraced the identity of we are a run-heavy offense now.
I mean, you made a really great point, and I think you could be correct. Like I said before I even said anything, definitely argument could be made for it, and I think you meant. And unless the Colts are going to be losing games, he could definitely be that number 1 guy, because if they're losing games, it's going to be Nyuk Hines catching passes out of the backfield. But if they're winning games, like they probably will be winning games, because they're a pretty good team. So I think they'll be able to carry that. Jonathan Taylor should be able to carry that load.
Yeah.
So I mean, definitely a good case.
I agree. So you touched on it. CMC just came back. What are your thoughts on CMC going forward? I have him in leagues, and I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
He's still CMC, but like you just made a point that I mean, I just saw it right before he got on too. So it's like Darnold being out is gonna kind of hurt him. I think PJ Walker is definitely serviceable, but I think Darnold already had that chemistry from preseason with him, and he knew how to utilize him. He is also the team's not going anywhere. Why would you risk injuring your main guy? I mean, he's gonna share the load with Chuba Hubbard. I don't think it's gonna be a full-time share, but I think it's 75-25, 25-25. CMC is not going to be that number one. He's not going to be the number one running back because it's just not going to make sense to utilize somebody like him who's already been hurt 2 years in a row. How about you let him carry some load, but assume for next year because you guys are not going anywhere.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Is with them losing games and him being the number one running back on that offense, I don't see them using him as much as they would going forward because one, you either risk him coming back next year and being the number one running back for them, or two, you risk the value of them trading him and him getting injured again. And I think that's a strong possibility that you see CMC get traded or something happens at the end of the season because this offense has not worked well with him being the focal point. Like I think they've made the playoffs maybe once since he's been the running back there, so and Matt Rule seems to be moving away from that CMC run heavy, him being the number one pass catcher in the offense. Something's going to happen.
One little rumor or a thought of mine is I think that, I mean, just a whim and something that somebody said to me, I think the Panthers may go back and get Cam Newton, and if they do, CMC will be a problem again because that was his man. So I think if they go get Cam Newton, especially now with the injury to Darnold, it could be a problem.
I don't think that's going to happen. I don't see it happening, but you could be right.
You're probably right. You're probably right, but I mean, just never know.
So let's get into the second topic, and that was the news that we got out of Cleveland. So Odell Beckham Jr. hit waivers today. He cleared waivers. He's a free agent to go anywhere. My question to you is, where's the best fit? And two, does he still hold value? And don't speak to me as a Giants fan. Don't speak to me as a Giants fan.
No, I think he depends on where he goes. I think if he goes to Green Bay or he goes to the Patriots, he'll have some value. If he goes to the Patriots, he'll automatically be the number one receiver over there. And I think Belichick loves to prove people wrong. So if he were to go to the Patriots, I think Mac Jones could possibly use a receiver like Odell. The only problem is that would steer me against that is you don't want Odell to mess up the rookie. You know? Odell has a tendency after the quarterback, and we don't want that to happen. But I think those are the two places that he would make the most sense. Him across with Dante Adams would be a really, really strong offense for Green Bay. And Aaron Rodgers has been wanting that number two receiver that he can have, not MVS or Alan Lazard. So if he went to Green Bay and was playing across from Dalvin Cook, and you have those two running backs in the backfield, that team is unstoppable. That team is going to possibly beat Tampa Bay. So I think that's a perfect fit for him, and I heard that's where he wants to go. So if he goes there, I think that the sky's the limit for that team. And I think Odell running those crisp routes. And if you look at some of the highlights and some of the film, I mean, it looks like Odell still has the moves. I mean, he's probably not as fast as he was when he was with the Giants, but he still has the moves. He could still run the routes. He could still get separation. It's just what's his name? Baker was not finding him in the offense, but I think those are his two spots.
Yeah. So I'm looking at this two different ways. He says he wants to go to a contender, but does he want to go to a contender and be the number one receiver? And if so, there's only two spots where I see that he could slot right in and be the number one receiver, and that's the Raiders and that's the Saints. Both are contenders. Both have fairly good offenses. I think he could slide in and make an immediate impact. If you want to go to a contender where you're okay with being the number 2 or 3 option in the offense, I think Green Bay makes the most sense, or even Kansas City if he wants to go down that route. But if he goes to, let's say, Green Bay or Kansas City, it significantly decreases his fantasy value from a week to week perspective. I think if he goes to the Raiders, instant offense, I think he could be a serviceable receiver in your lineup. I think if he goes to the Saints, he can be a serviceable receiver in your lineup. I think Trevor Siemian isn't great, but Trevor Siemian can get the ball downfield, and Sean Payton can draw up plays where he can be effective. And they need that number one receiver in New Orleans. So I say those are the two that you look out for. Green Bay isn't known to go and pick players up mid-season that are of Odell's caliber.
You got to keep Aaron Rodgers happy though, because you saw what happened with Jordan Love last week. He did nothing, and Aaron Rodgers wants that other receiver, and if you don't keep him happy, Jordan Love's not going to be the answer. So I think that has to be an option for them. But I think if I had to bet right now and put money on, I think he might go to the Patriots. And you don't like the Patriots?
I don't like the Patriots for him. I think the Patriots have embraced who they are as a team. They are a run-first offense that relies on Mac Jones second. And I don't think he's going to get enough targets. I don't think he's going to get the volume. And I think he's going to be very impatient within that offense. I think when he wanted to go to the Patriots earlier, that's when Brady was there, and that made perfect sense. But I don't see the Patriots as a good option for him if he wants to be on a contender that's going to be Super Bowl contenders, and also that he's going to get work and volume. And I don't see the Patriots as being a good fit for him.
Even with Belichick.
I mean, Belichick is a defensive mind.
I know, but you got Josh McDaniels, yeah.
Josh McDaniels is good, but this offense has embraced his identity as a run-first offense. Damian Harris is the man, the running back. Then you have Brandon Bolden as the passing down back, and then you have Ramondre Stevenson as the spell back. I don't see any of their wide receivers getting 100 or more yards a game, or even 5 catches a game. Like, it's hard in that offense. The tight ends are more of the focal point than the wide receivers.
Yeah, I mean, you make sense, but my bet is Patriots, but I digress. While we're in the Patriots, just a quick question, though, for you. Do you think there's somebody on the Patriots that's worth picking up? Because obviously the running backs are on concussion protocol right now.
Who's in protocol?
I think Stevenson and Harris.
Brandon Bolden. Brandon Bolden is the.
Can he carry the workload though?
I think you see them lean more on a short yardage passing game with Brandon Bolden being the back, and then you'll see J.J. Taylor come in, but J.J. Taylor hasn't been that effective.
Yeah, he did nothing.
He
didn't do nothing early.
He's not a Ramondre Stevenson type of spell back. So they may lean on him for early down work, but Brandon Bolden is going to get the majority of the volume in that backfield. If that's the case, fingers crossed, I'm hoping Damian Harris comes back.
Yeah.
So
hopefully he will.
So on to another running back that's kind of I wouldn't say he's exploded on the scene, but his workload is probably going to skyrocket, and that's James Conner. Mm-hmm. What do you think about James Conner going forward?
James Conner's always been my guy, so I think I'm kind of biased. I drafted him, I believe, in 4 out of 7 leagues that I'm in this year, and I drafted him. I didn't pick him off waivers or anything like that. This guy is very talented. I think when Le'Veon Bell left Pittsburgh, this guy came in and he fit the mold. His biggest problem is his injuries. Every time he has some good runs, he gets injured. And I think the reason he was working for the Cardinals is because they spelled him a lot. They had Chase Edmonds. But I think if this guy stays healthy, he's a borderline number 1. I mean, maybe number 12 or 13, but he's right there, like as a top running back. This guy runs between the tackles. He can catch passes out of the backfield. And before this injury, he was getting touchdowns. He leads the NFL in touchdowns, doesn't he? So, I mean, why can't he be that number 1 running back? And I feel like really good that I have him. Like, I picked him up, and people kept laughing. Like, oh, why you have the number 2 in Arizona? But I know that James Conner he's really a good player. I mean, the guy did really good work in Pittsburgh. If he didn't get injured, he would have been up there with one of those best running backs, and he's a receiving back. So I think it really works. And I think if back even without Kyler, I think it's going to be he's going to become that bell cow. But the problem is we got to worry about him getting injured. He could be injured next week, for all I know. But if he stays healthy, definitely number one.
Yeah, I'm buying into James Conner now. I was one of those people that was like, why are you drafting James Conner? You know, I wasn't sold on James Conner, but looking at the numbers this season, double digits in 5 out of 9 games, 10 TDs, and he just seems to be getting better as the season progresses. We're at that midway point now where you start to see players really start to take form and what the offense is truly going to be going forward for the rest of the season. I see them leaning on James Conner a little bit more than they were in the beginning of the season. Obviously, the Chase Edmonds injury helps his volume. So if there's somebody that's in 12th, 11th, 10th, and they have James Conner on their roster, I'm approaching them to see if maybe I can work a deal to try to get him in my roster for the rest of the season. Because I think he's going to have the volume going forward. And with the injuries to DeAndre Hopkins, the injuries to Kyler Murray, I don't know if you're going to see them use them as much as they were in the beginning of the season to try to keep them healthy for the end of the season. So they may, rely on the run game a little bit more.
Absolutely. Would you pick up the backup? What was his name? He looked pretty good, actually. His now backup.
Yeah. I can't remember his name.
I can't remember. Yeah, me neither.
But yes, I would pick him up. If Chase Edmonds is going to be out, which we think he is going to be, I would pick him up because the injuries to DeAndre Hopkins and Kyler are significant to this offense. That's your number one, wide receiver, number one quarterback, and really a top 5 quarterback within the league right now. So I think you're going to see them just use the run game more and more and more going down the stretch. They're in the lead. It's not like they don't have a sizable advantage over.
Yep, they're not running from. Yeah,
right,
exactly.
They're not running from anybody.
They're not playing from behind every weekend.
Right.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I think they utilize the run game more, earlier in the game than they were before. And I'm going to find his name.
Definitely should be picked up because Conner is injury prone and definitely want to have that backup guy. That obviously, if Conner gets hurt, he's going to be a guy.
Yep. So on from one downtrodden running back to another one, and that's Adrian Peterson. We saw Adrian Peterson make his debut with the Titans. I mean, this guy has 9 lives. Nobody expected him to even be on a team this season. He gets in the game, 10 carries, 21 yards, 1 reception, gets the touchdown. Is he startable for the remainder of the season?
My opinion, if you're in a deep league and you need a starter, you got to hope he falls in the end zone. But I honestly don't think he's a starter for the rest of the season. He's somebody that if you're in a pinch, you got to buy. You need somebody, put him in. I picked him up in one league, but I hope to not have to play. He'll play when I need somebody to just fall in the end zone because I think he can. He's gonna trust me. He's gonna have a game where he's gonna have 75 yards and possibly 2 touchdowns. But for the majority of the time, it's gonna be like 13 for 30 or something like that, and maybe 1 catch because he doesn't catch a bunch. I mean, he's useless in my opinion. You just gotta hope he falls in the end zone. And like I said, unless it's a bye week for you or you need somebody to fill in, don't use Adrian Peterson. I mean, you'll never know when to start him.
He's a flex option for me, and the reason why I said that is because who else are they going to use in the running game? It's not going to be Jeremy McNichols. We saw that last week. Jeremy McNichols will factor in and passing down work, but he's not a between the tackles runner. They didn't use him that way last week, and I see this team. He's not going to be Derrick Henry, but they are going to run the ball. That's their identity, and that's why they got Adrian Peterson is because he has the same kind of older makeup of Derrick Henry. Smash mouth, run between the tackles, hit you in your mouth, going downhill. So I think they are going to use him. He's going to get the work. In his first week, he got 10 carries, and that was against the Rams. So going forward, I think you're going to see him get 10 plus probably every week because they're not going to use Deontay Foreman. Jeremy McNichols isn't going to be that guy. Tennessee is going to run the ball. So I say he's a flex at least. He's not somebody that I'm like, if I have three good running backs that are more effective, I would rather have them in my lineup. But if I need a running back, he's an RB2 flex for me to put in because there's a possibility of getting a touchdown. He's going to get 10 plus touches, and that's what we look for in fantasy players every week.
But don't you think Foreman looked better than him, though?
Yeah, but we've seen them have Foreman before. We've seen other teams have Foreman before, and nobody has used Foreman. Like the Deontay Foreman value that we think as fantasy managers and owners that we think, yeah, put Foreman in. Foreman's going to be the more effective runner. Coaches don't see it that way for some reason. It's the guy that they trust. And right now, I think with him coming in week one after 1 week of practice against the Rams in a competitive game, them saying, give this guy 10 touches, give him 10 carries. Like, I think going forward, you're going to see a heavy usage for Adrian Peterson. It's not going to be in the pass game or anything like that, but he's going to get the runs. It's going to be Derrick Henry-ish volume, just not Derrick Henry-ish numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I disagree, but I mean, we'll see. I mean, I don't think there's much left in him. He didn't look like he had speed. He's in great shape, but he doesn't look like he has any speed. I didn't see any burst. He's gonna fall in the end zone. That's all you got to hope for. If he falls in the end zone, you're good. You know.
Yep.
But I mean, I wouldn't start if I didn't have to.
Flex worthy for me. On to the next topic. So in the San Francisco wide receivers, we were only seeing Deebo Samuel. That was it. And George Kittle was back. And one guy who has kind of slowly picked up the pace is Brandon Ayuk. Where does Brandon Ayuk land for you? Is he a startable option going forward?
I think Brandon Ayuk is definitely a startable option. I think having Kittle back is now going to take some of the distraction off of Ayuk, and it's going to go. I mean, yeah, off of Ayuk, and now it's going to be Ayuk show. I think Ayuk could being better from this point on than Deebo Samuels because I think he fits the system right, and now you have an intermediate guy in the middle like Kittle that's going to take that pressure off of him. So I think Ayuk is going to be huge in my opinion. I think Deebo had a really good start because he was fitting the system without Kittle, but Kittle is their number one receiver no matter what. I don't care what anybody says. That's the guy they want to be that number one guy receiving the football in the backfield. So, but I think being that he's going to be that guy in the intermediate that's going to be opening up the field for Ayuk, he's going to be the second progression. Ayuk's going to be the guy in the progression. So I think you're going to see Ayuk really have a great second half of the season. And I think you're going to see a downswing from Deebo Samuels. But I think Deebo will still be good. Don't get me wrong. But I think Ayuk's going to be the better guy.
Yeah, I hate when you take my points, Phil. And that was that Kittle is back now. And they didn't have Kittle to take that threat over the middle and to pull away some of the coverage. Now they have Kittle back. And you saw this week double-digit points. And in the last 2 weeks, he has 7+ targets. This is also somebody who was coming off a hamstring injury in the beginning of the year. And I, like everybody else, wrote him off like, second-year slump. He's not going to be effective. And we see him kind of picking up the pace. I think a lot of the times we negate just how serious hamstring injuries are, especially for wide receivers. It takes a long time to come back from a hamstring injury. So you see him slowly starting to work himself back. And now that Kittle is back, you have another threat in the passing game that can take away coverage. I think Deebo is still going to be Deebo. Deebo is still going to be, to me, I think Deebo is still going to be the number one option in that offense. But I think Ayuk is going to get a lot more volume than he was getting before. And Kittle being back is going to help that. It also helps him in the red zone too, because Ayuk was a good target in the red zone last
Yeah,
year, and we just haven't
absolutely.
seen that this year.
Yeah, yep.
And I think over the
I
last 2
agree. I
weeks,
think we agree a lot on you.
yeah. And over the last 2 weeks, we saw him getting more targets in the red zone and just more targets in general. So he's a startable option for me going forward if you have him on your team.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. He's definitely WR2 in my opinion.
So last topic of the night is QB streamers for this week. Few teams on by. One of the most notable ones is Cincinnati. So Joe Burrow is out. Um, who are your streamers for this week?
I have three, but I'm gonna go with two. It's Cousins. Obviously, he's going against the Chargers. It's gonna be a high scoring game. They're gonna be playing from. I mean, it might not be playing from behind, but I think Cousins. He's looked good in the last few weeks overall. I mean, not. I don't think he was great this past week, but I think overall he's looked good. And I think against the Chargers, I think he's definitely gonna be able to open up against them. Um, Chargers score a lot of points. To keep up, you're gonna score a lot of points. So I think it's gonna be Kirk Cousins is my number one streamer if he's available on your waiver wire. Second guy I was thinking was probably Mac Jones. He's going up against Cleveland. Belichick's old home to home, and I think that Belichick is going to scheme up some things for him because Belichick likes to take things out on people, and I think he was the Browns coach, and I think he's going to look to get Mac Jones going against them. I think Mac Jones has looked really solid. And again, the thing that we spoke about earlier, the possible concussions of the two running backs may lead to Mac Jones throwing a little more. So Brandon Bolden out of the backfield, if he can get some catches for 10 to 15 yards at a time, I mean, it could open up a lot of short intermediate passes for Mac Jones, which could then lead to a deep bomb to Myers or Nikhil Harry or somebody like that, or Aguilar actually.
Yeah, that's a good
So those
point.
those are my two guys.
Uh, Mine was Taylor Heineke going against Tampa Bay.
How we've changed.
I know. Taylor Heineke going against Tampa Bay. I mean, it's Tampa Bay. Like they're going to have to keep up. They're going to have to throw the ball. Tampa Bay's secondary is kind of vulnerable a little bit. They're not going to be running the ball in this game. Um, so Taylor Heineke. I mean, J.D. McKissick is probably going to be heavily involved in this one, and Terry McLaurin as well. So I'm going Taylor Heineke is my number one streamer for this week, and then my
I
second
like that.
one. My second one is I was going the opposite of you. I'm going with Baker Mayfield, just simply because of the Nick Chubb and Demetric Felton injuries. And like you said, Bill Belichick likes to take away your number one option. Number one option this week is probably going to be for Baker to Austin Hooper to David Njoku, and then Jarvis Landry, and then you'll see a sprinkle of Donovan Peoples-Jones and Schwartz as well. So I think they're going to look to attack New England through the air. They're not going to be able to do it on the ground. So Baker Mayfield is my second one, and then kind of a runner-up is your boy Matt Ryan going against Dallas.
I thought about it, but I think Dallas got something to prove this week, man. After that, it was a tough loss for them. They got something to prove. It's going to be tough for Matt Ryan, in my opinion. I don't hate the pick, but I just feel like Dallas is going to have something to prove. They're going to want to make a statement, and that defense is a really strong defense that just played really bad this past
Yeah,
week.
I agree. But I feel like if I need somebody, I'm putting Matt Ryan in my lineup. So that's
It's fair.
that's all that we have for today. Anything else?
No, that's it. Hopefully we get a better week of football. I mean, some more competitive football. But some football that we expect, I would say. Um, Hopefully, we see some things round into shape. Some teams get better. Obviously, fantasy season's more than halfway by. Obviously, the regular season because we only played the 14 weeks and the playoffs. So, season is it's do or die time. Like if you're in the cusp right now, you better play that waiver wire strong tonight and get those plays off the wire. There's not many on it this week, in my opinion, but you just got to make sure that you're focused and you do that last minute research and make sure you get those players. If you don't have the right players and you go into this week, and you go down and you're down like 6 losses going into next week, it's going to be tough to get out of. So you better find somebody in the waiver wire.
Explore market. Make your team better. If it's a redraft, the deal has to work for both parties. If it's a keeper league, explore the trade market, please, because the waiver wire is very bare, depending on what league you're in. Yep. So that
one thing I would add, I mean, we don't talk about this often, is at this point, a lot of teams have passed their buys. And if there's a strong defense out there, it's a time to try to keep one defense and not completely stream, in my opinion, because sometimes, or look at playoff matchups, if you're far you're basically going to make the playoffs, try to get a kicker in a defense that you're not going to have to think about. Look at their schedule, especially the defense, and make sure that they're playing teams that's favorable for them. Because I think a defense could win you a game. I mean, just this week, I mean, there's some defenses that really won some games for some teams. And if you have that defense and the perfect matchups, you're going to win some games.
Yeah, like the Jaguars.
Exactly.
Please, somebody.
No, but really,
somebody on the bill run the ball, please.
Yeah.
Defenses have picked up on Josh Allen, and they know that they're passing every down, which allows defenses to tee off on him. So please run the ball, please.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that does it for us. There's no crying in fantasy. Week 9 is in the bag. We're moving on to week 10. Phil, I appreciate you showing up to be Mitty. Get well. We hope to see you.
I've been trying to get him on. I was with him this past weekend. I tried to tell him to get on. So maybe he'll be back sooner than later.
Hopefully soon.
Yeah.
All right, man.
All right, take it easy. Same to you.